Hello everyone. Thank you very much for your presentation at the FC 2021 conference. This paper was co-authored with Professor Byung-taek An of Anyang University. I'm Professor Hyukjun Choi of Pyeongtaek University who will present today. The title of this paper is a study on the utilization factors and satisfaction of cross-border e-commerce in Korea. Then I will start the presentation. The table of content is organized as follows. First, introduction. Second, literature review. Third, research design. First, the result of HP analysis and IPA. Finally, conclusion. This slide is an introduction which is the background and purpose of the study. The prolonged COVID-19 has caused many changes not only in Korea, but also around the world. E-commerce, in particular, has become a key shopping tool due to COVID-19. According to Euromonitor, the global e-commerce volume in 2019 was about $2 trillion, a high annual growth rate of more than 20%. And global cross-border e-commerce market is forecast to grow to more than 8% CAGR in 2020 per 2024. Increasing penetration of mobile computing devices and the adoption of blockchain technology in the logistics market are key factors driving growth in this market. Amid the global economic crisis, cross-border e-commerce is rapidly growing. Therefore, this study seeks to highlight the important factors that Korean consumers consider when using cross-border e-commerce and analyze their satisfaction. Next, as a literature review, I will look at the concept of cross-border e-commerce and previous study. E-commerce generally refers to the production, advertising, sale, and distribution of products through electronic means. E-commerce can occur within and between three basic participant groups: business, government, and individual. There are four main types of e-commerce, namely business to business B2B, business to consumer B2C, consumer to consumer, and business to government. E-commerce can be divided into domestic or cross-border according to whether the buyer and seller are located in the same country or not. While the basic definition of e-commerce seems to be simple, it has become increasingly sophisticated for the past 2 decades in the following ways. First, the variety of e-commerce platforms has increased substantially. Second, a single e-commerce platform may have evolved from a marketplace into an e-commerce ecosystem. Third, technologies such as cloud computing, big data, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and blockchain have been adopted by e-commerce platforms, which yield new business models. First, the rapid development of e-commerce in many countries in the region has given rise to a large number of e-commerce operators. Cross-border e-commerce can be divided into two modes of operation: bond import and direct purchase. The scope of cross-border e-commerce includes both international B2B and B2C. The scope of the study is covered by the B2C e-commerce sector. The type of cross-border e-commerce are largely divided into direct overseas purchase and reverse direct purchase. Among them, overseas direct purchase means that consumers directly purchase products they want through internet sites such as overseas open market or clothing brand site. It is called overseas direct purchase. Korea's National Statistical Office defined it as online direct overseas purchase. The rapid development of information technology has led to many changes in e-commerce methods, and research related to social network service and cross-border e-commerce is actively conducted. Next, let's take a look at the previous study on cross-border e-commerce. Valarezo et al. It suggests that the development of computer and internet technology has promoted cross-border e-commerce. Choi predicted that cross-border e-commerce would significantly reduce trade costs, noting that an efficient and flexible international payment system would be important for the promotion of e-commerce. Penn et al. Suggested that CBEC products often require long-distance transport, so logistics-related problems are priority to overcome, and that international cooperation is needed between the parties sales in the Chinese market. And Kwak presented strategies for effective overseas direct sales in the Chinese market. Unlike previous studies, this study analyzed what factors Korean consumers usually consider when using cross-border e-commerce and the difference between important factor and satisfaction. This slide is a research design. AHP techniques are used to analyze the main consideration factors for consumer using CBEC. In this study, in addition to the activation factors presented in the preceding study, additional improvement factors were considered through interview with experts responsible for cross-border e-commerce. Experts interviewed 8 e-commerce companies, the Korea Customs Service, e-commerce delivery company, and e-commerce professor to derive the following factors. This study had derived 19 major variables through expert interview and stratified the variable into 4 higher level factors in consideration of the characteristics of the variables. The next slide is sample selection and data collection. This study prepared and distributed questionnaire to Korean consumers who use cross-border e-commerce. A total of 248 copies of the survey were distributed and 142 copies were collected with 120 valid samples. This survey was conducted through email, text, and messenger. First, result of AHP analysis in IPA. This slide is a demographic characteristic of respondents. Demographic analysis was divided into gender, age, occupation, and purchase item. Please left to the slide. The following figure 2 shows the result of AHP analysis. The AHP analysis in this study showed that the transaction factor was the most important factor, followed by the logistics factor, the e-commerce system, and the payment factors. The following figure 3 shows the result of IPA analysis. IPA analysis shows that the key improvement factor are multilingual homepage in the transaction factor and fast after-service return and refund system in the e-commerce system. In terms of logistics factors, the 2 factors were quick delivery and quick action for delivery error. The payment factors were analyzed as response to payment error. The three factors that should be maintained and grown were low price, ease of transaction procedures, and convenience of procuring categories. It was analyzed as one factor of delivery information in logistics factor and two factor of secure payment system and various payment methods in payment factors. Finally, the conclusion. Based on ICT, the cross-border e-commerce market is growing rapidly, and its size is expected to expand further. In particular, cross-border e-commerce is expected to be a new wave for small and medium-sized Korean companies and startups that need to enter the global market to overcome the limitation of the domestic market. At a time when cross-border e-commerce is rapidly increasing, this study highlights important factors that Korean consumers consider when using cross-border e-commerce and analyze their satisfaction accordingly. In order to achieve the purpose of this study, the relative importance was calculated through a comparative evaluation between each factor using the analytical hierarchy process. In addition, importance performance analysis was conducted to simultaneously determine the importance and satisfaction of cross-border e-commerce trade service. The AHP analysis in this study showed that the transaction factor was the most important. Meanwhile, IP analysis showed that the key improvement factors are multilingual homepage and the transaction factor. The limitation of this study are as follows. First, the study was conducted focusing only on Korean consumer. E-commerce trade is carried out in many other countries, so research on consumer in various countries and regions is needed. Second, cross-border e-commerce needs to be addressed from the corporate side. In particular, it is necessary to analyze what sectors are needed for overseas direct sales and entry. Third, it is also thought that it would be meaningful to analyze the difference between cross-border e-commerce by product purchase type. This concludes the presentation. Thanks for listening.